Hello, hello. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in Headlights, and I want to thank you for joining us. And before we forget, if you'll go down there and hit that subscribe button, you won't miss a single episode. Now, today we have got a special guest with us, Diane Noble, but you write as Nova Garcia, correct?
That's right. It's Diana Noble. And for my third book, I used a pen name and it's Nova Garcia.
And I like that too.
Yeah.
Now, Nova Garcia, that's an interesting choice of pen name for you. You want to tell us how that came about?
Yes, I will. So my first two books were young adult historical fiction, and I wrote those under my own name, Diana J. Noble. And then my third book, it was a complete departure from the first two. It's a women's fiction, dark comedy, cozy mystery. It could fit into a number of different genres and such a completely different target audience. I mean, anybody would enjoy it, but I think in particular women and working moms, new moms, and I think Latinas in particular, since it features a Latina protagonist and
Mhm.
Latina characters throughout the book. And I just felt like with such a different audience, it's a grown-up audience. The book's a little bit saucy in places that I wanted to just use a totally different name so that there's no confusion between who I'm writing for. So I used a pen name. I came up with Nova Garcia. Garcia is a very common name in Spanish, as you probably know. It's kind of
Mhm.
equivalent to Smith, but it's actually my grandmother's maiden name. So that's how I came up with the Garcia part.
All right.
Yeah.
And you are a Latina American, right? Didn't you grow up in Texas?
Yes, I was born in South Texas on the border on the Rio Grande River in Laredo, Texas. And my parents were born and raised in southern Texas in what they call the Valley down there in the point of Texas. And my family moved around from state to state as I was growing up, but Mexican American culture was really prevalent for me. Both my parents were completely fluent. I'm semi-fluent. They spoke mostly Spanish, and my brothers and I answered in English. So nowadays I understand it better than I speak it, but I speak it fairly well also.
Okay, well, you're way beyond me because I
Okay.
happen to say a couple of words and that's about it. That's about
Yeah,
my level of it. And you live in the Pacific Northwest now, correct?
that's right. I moved to Washington State when I was an eighth grader. As you know, with my dad's job, we moved around and we came here when I was in eighth grade and I never left. I love it. We started out on Mercer Island. That's where I went to school. Then on to University of Washington, and my husband and I and our family now live in Edmonds.
All right. And I was over in that direction for a while, and now I'm still in the Sound, but not quite up that far north.
Yeah.
Now, you were talking about branding of your name in your book, changing that, and that is important. Um, I have several authors that have done that, where they change their pen name to go along with their writing brand. And you're now writing in women's fiction. I think that's basically what the genre would run into, even though it is a
Mhm.
mystery. I think you have a motherhood mystery with humor and heart.
That's right. That's kind of the tagline, a motherhood mystery with humor and heart. Right.
I like that. Now, let's go right into that. Not that kind of call girl. That's a really catchy title. I happen to like it a lot. You want to just give us some story behind where does that come from? Where does it go?
I will. So when I first wrote the book, I called it Call Girl. And the reason I called it Call Girl is because the protagonist in the book is a call center manager at a daily newspaper in Washington State. And so I wasn't getting any agents to bite on my queries that I was sending in. And then it kind of hit me like, wait a minute, maybe Call Girl is confusing them because they haven't read the book. They don't know what the play on words is all about. And they might say,
Absolutely.
I don't want, I'm not interested in a book about a call girl. So I changed it to not that kind of call girl. So, and that's exactly what it is. It's a play on words. She's a call center manager, and some of the scenes take place in the call center. So it's not that kind of call girl. That's what it's all about.
I think it's perfect. In
Yeah,
fact, I like it better. That has got so many folds of possibility to it that you
right.
kind of, I wonder what that's about. That sounds neat.
Exactly. That I like that too. I want it to kind of pique your interest and go, what the heck? And then maybe read the back of the book.
Exactly.
Right.
Because Nobody buys the book because they know what's in it. They buy the book because of the cover and because of the back blurb. Really.
Exactly.
Then they get in the book and they go, once they know you and your genre and your brand and things, then they'll pick up the next book because, oh, I like that one. She does good.
Exactly.
That's really important for all the authors out there. And we get a lot of newer authors that are looking for these words of wisdom, I guess you would call it, information at least, whether it's wisdom or not. I don't know if I'm that far up the scale of things, but
Well, sometimes we try things and we fail and we learn from that and we move on and try and do better. And that's just part of the process.
we do.
Hmm.
That's what it's like to be human and
That's
adults.
right.
And
Hmm.
so, what made you take up writing in the first place?
So I started with my first young adult novel. It's called Evangelina Takes Flight, or Evangelina. That was my other grandmother's first name, Evangelina. I liked that, and it's based on her story loosely. And I was going through a particularly rough period in my life. I'd had a death in the family of a sibling. Um, it was very tragic and unexpected, and I was struggling to kind of work my way through that grief. And at some point, I kind of got fed up with myself and said, "You have got to figure out a way to move on." And I thought I need to find some sort of larger purpose to get engaged with, and decided I wanted to try and write my grandmother's life story, and took a class at Edmonds Community College. And the professor there said, "You know what? This story really needs to be told. And your writing is excellent. I want you to continue. Don't give this up." And that's kind of what got the ball rolling. And it did make me feel like I had something to do with a larger purpose. I wanted to write a young adult novel with a Mexican protagonist. There aren't enough Latinos
Mhm.
in books, children's books, and otherwise. And it was a story about the Mexican Revolution, about an immigrant family struggling on the United States side of the border, and the racism that they were facing. So I just felt like there's a lot of purpose in this book that I'm trying to get across, and it kind of helped me work my way through that very difficult time. So that's how it got started.
That's cool. Actually, I like the fact of bringing in those other cultures and ways of thinking. Um, as we've had talks here with Black Americans and Native Americans, and to be able to bring that other culture. Yes, I happen to be fairly white, honestly, but I've got German background, I've got American Indian background, and I try to stay aware that things are what they are at the moment. They weren't that in past history, and they won't be the same in the future. And it's where we've chosen to take ourselves and how we make those choices. So being aware of these things in our reading, in our writing, and just in daily life can really make a difference.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, I've done some research on this. So 19% of the population currently, according to the census, is Latino, or Hispanic. Those terms are not quite interchangeable, but they
They're
but
not.
there is some crossover. Um, but I think it was in 2023 there were 6% of children's books, and that includes young adult, that featured a Latino protagonist. So 19% of the population, not the scales are just not, they're not even yet.
It's not
And
balanced.
so,
No,
no, it's not balanced. And so we are progressing. I think, I forgot what it was in 2001, it was like 2% to the books and 6% of the books in 2023. So we're definitely making progress, but I wanted to be part of that, part of the solution there.
well, good. Thank you for doing that, and I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that too. Yeah. So do you have a plan? Now you've written three, two in one genre, and another one in the women's lit. Do you have a plan for next story?
I was just talking to my husband this morning that this seems to happen with me. I'll get a book out, and it takes me years to write these books. I am not a like in 6 months I've got a book out there or I've written a book. No, it takes me years. I mean, years. So it took me 4 years on this last book to write. And so once I get it out, then I go through a bit of a lull in that I just don't feel like sitting down and writing. I just don't. It takes me a while to kind of work up the energy to start again. It's such an intensive process. It's a wonderful
A
and
massive
rewarding
process.
process. It's a
Yeah.
massive, massive undertaking. Um, but I'm retired now. I've got time on my hands and I could certainly sit down and I have the idea for a story. I think it's going to be back to the young adult genre is what I'm planning. I'm hoping to get started in the next, within a month or so. I'll get going.
Well, I do like the young adult book version. In fact, that's what I write. I find that teens, young adult isn't quite what it sounds like. It goes from 13 up to, I don't know, like 18. And I would think it'd be a little more than that, but it's not. Then it moves on to new adult. It's a newer term genre, which
Hmm.
is up into the 20s and things. But I still like the young adult version because kids are still teachable. I like that genre. I really do.
Me too. And you know what? There are plenty of adults out there who read young adult novels.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, many, many young adult novels are perfectly readable and enjoyable by the adult audience. And I found that with my first two books, I think in particular because they're historical fictions and it's true history and it's representing a different experience, the immigrant family experience, so different than what most people can really relate to unless they themselves have immigrated here recently with their families. It's a different perspective. The first book won quite a few national awards, so I was super excited about that since it was my
Congratulations.
first book. Thank you. But the one of the awards, the one I was most proud of was that it won the best young adult novel was awarded by the National Association of Chicano and Chicana Studies. So these are
Woo!
professors and the academic world awarded this for its historical accuracy. So that book took me 7 years to write
Well done.
because the research that was involved was
Mhm.
tremendous, tremendous. And I wanted to get it right. So I was really proud of that particular award, just was very rewarding.
You don't win awards just because you put pen to paper and wrote it out. And again, I want to say
Right.
thank you to David Beaumier of Chanticleer. He actually dropped me your names. So a
The
shout out
third
to
the
him.
third book won first place with
Absolutely.
Chanticleer. So that was super. I mean, you're right. You don't live for the awards, but they sure do feel good.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
certainly do. So you've maybe got something theorized for the future. I hope you do that, continue your work. Before we jump away, do you have any difficulties that you found in your writing journey, and how do you get past those?
Oh gosh, so many difficulties. Um, but like I said, it's a pleasure too, or I wouldn't keep doing it. So, I keep doing this over and over. I think I'm constantly questioning myself. Is this good enough? Is it I edit to death my novels. I spend almost as much time editing as I do writing because I'm constantly questioning, is this the right word? Is this the right cutoff before the next chapter? Is this character rich enough? Is there enough backstory? Is there an information dump? And I need to break that up and into small chunks and reveal those things throughout the story. I mean, I'm constantly questioning whether I'm doing it right or I'm doing it in a way that's going to be appealing to agents or and readers, of course. So I think, even with some of the success that I've had, I'm constantly questioning whether I'm really good enough at this. Um, and I think that shows up in the amount of time that I do the editing before I finally feel like it's ready to go. So
Yeah.
that's one piece of it, I guess. I'm also most many people authors will have heard the terms pantser versus plotter. So you either plot your book out in advance and you know exactly where it's going to go and you have all the chapters outlined and you know what the inciting incident. I'm not one of those. I'm a pantser, so I fly by the seat of my pants. I kind of have a general idea of what I want to write, and then I want to see where my brain goes with it. And I love that. I love seeing when I'm really in a groove where my brain is taking the story. And so the story evolves sometimes differently than I first imagined it because I'm letting my brain go where it's taking the story. But that means I have to go back and rework things probably more.
Well, even on this particular show, I have said over and over, I've got to change my methodology so that I plot it out better before I take off,
I do
because
too.
it takes me so long, so much time to go back and edit and change the plot and go through, because it goes somewhere I didn't plan on in the start. And yet, and yet, I've started my next book, and I thought I was going to write this all out, and I got about a page of notes going, and I got into the writing, and it's now into, oh gosh, I don't know, 10,000 words. And I haven't
Wow.
once stepped back in to look at my notes. And it takes me about a year and a half to write a book. You said 4 years. On the other hand, that's probably an average. So
Yes, yes,
a quick average. I'm getting better as I go because I know a little bit more.
right.
And after having written, 5 or 6, it makes a difference. It certainly does, because you
Hmm.
know more. And so for those of you out there writing, do attend conferences and things and lectures and training sessions and read up and all of those things that can help you, because you need it. We don't know everything. It doesn't matter if you've got a degree in writing in college or not. You've got to sit down and put it to paper and make it work. And when you get done, you have to edit it and edit,
That's right.
edit, re-edit and polish. And then finally, somewhere down the line, you have to say, okay, it's going to be good enough. Let's put it out there.
Yep.
Even then, once it's printed, you go back through and go, oh, there's something, and you can make those changes nowadays. Thank goodness.
Yes. Yeah, and so I don't know, it's interesting. I'd have to ask my publisher if I could do that because I found a couple of places where I made mistakes
Yes.
in this last book, and I'm
Yep.
hoping nobody picks up on them, but I picked up on them when I saw the book in print, and I'm like, oh no, something came, I used a name incorrectly in one spot that's driving me batty, but it may have to wait until the next you know,
Yeah. So you
publication of the
do
book.
keep those listed and then put those together. And yes, they
Yeah,
can be updated to do that.
yeah.
When your next book comes out, please let me know, and we'll get that onto DurmanPublishing.com's bookstore, and we'll wait for it. Okay.
Okay. Well, and in the meantime, try this one out. I think it's very funny. It's got some very serious topics in it. Some dark, that's why I'm calling it a dark comedy. There's something really dark and mysterious going on at the center of the novel. But in
Okay.
the meantime, it's very funny. It's a good beach read. It's a quick read. I think people will really enjoy it.
All right. And that's Not That Kind of Call Girl by
Yeah.
Nova Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. And until next time, I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, sponsored by DurmanPublishing.com.